morning, everyone, and welcome to MetricStream's GRC Summit 2020. My name is Jonathan Curtis, and I manage MetricStream's GRC solution practice focused on operational risk. Today, we're going to have a panel discussion that's focused on, are you prepared for the risks that are on the horizon? Today, I have two panelists with me. I'd like to introduce Natalia Negal. She is the Chief Risk Officer for LeasePlan USA. LeasePlan USA is a global leader in fleet management services. She holds multiple degrees, including a master's in applied math from DePaul University and a master's degree in risk management from NYU Stern School of Business. Natalia has been with LeasePlan for over 5 years and brings 20 years of banking and financial services experience to the table. She's a corporate risk expert with a strong passion for analytics, change management, and leadership. Natalia, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. So I've also got with me today Sophie Dupré-Echeverria. Sophie is the Chief Risk Officer and Compliance Officer of Gulf International Bank UK Limited. She's responsible for driving an effective risk culture throughout the company, designing risk and compliance frameworks, and overseeing risk management and regulatory compliance practices. Sophie joined Gulf International Bank UK with extensive experience in the field, having previously served as Executive Director for Compliance and Operational Risk Control at UBS Asset Management. And before that, she was the Global Head of Operational Risk at Barings and Non-Executive Director of the Barings Collar Secondaries Fund. Sophie was also an Operational Risk Manager and the Group Head of Investment Risk Frameworks at Schroders. Sophie graduated from Université Lumière Lyon 2 with a master's degree in economics and finance. She recently stepped down as the chairperson of the Investment Association's Business and Enterprise Risk Committee and is a member of the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment. Sophie, welcome.
Thank you for the introduction, Jonathan, and hello, everyone.
Thank you. All right, so I mentioned before that today our topic is, are you prepared for risks on the horizon? And as everyone knows now, with the pandemic, it has exposed greater risks for all businesses, from cyber attacks, data transfer confidentiality issues, resilience of primary services, supply levels, and it's highlighted the importance of looking out for emerging risks. So we're going to focus on that today. As organizations grapple with adjusting to this new normal, they're also going to need to reassess their existing emerging risk programs and to accommodate new business strategies, cultural shifts, and competitive landscape. Things are not going to immediately go back to the way they were. So we're definitely going to address that today. So I want to kick off the discussion today by pointing out a question to Natalia. And it's basically, as we learned from COVID-19 pandemic experiences, these low frequency and high severity events can appear at any time. How does your organization at LeasePlan USA look for enhancing emerging risk management in this current scenario?
We're actually well on the way on building an emerging risk framework and the way to manage emerging risks, to be aware of them, to be on the lookout and be sensitive for what's happening. So what we have started doing already about a year and a half ago is to put the topic on the table in a much more deliberate and intentional way. And from that experience, what I can say that there's a few things that can really help and we want to focus on going forward. And it's something that I would encourage all organizations to do. And first, emerging risk really has to be supported by the leadership. It has to be embraced as a topic, embraced in a serious manner, because unless the leadership really takes it seriously and supports not only the organization, but also the risk management department in order for them to spearhead and drive emerging risk, making sure that it's on the radar of everybody that's in the organization, it's not going to take off. Emerging risk is strategic and a very high level topic, and it really needs to have a focus of a body that can look not only on the organization, but at the market, at the industry, and then the environment. So it's really very important that it has the full support of leadership. Secondly, it really needs to be complemented with external information. So if we think about our current frameworks, our current, let's say, risk registers, risk dictionaries, chances are we are not going to see the black swan events. We're not going to see a lot of events even if it's not a black swan. I would go so as far as saying that the COVID pandemic is not a black swan, because we have recently, over the past, let's say 10, 15 years, experienced something not of such a great magnitude, but of the same nature. So but as organizations, for example, I am representing a banking organization. We have not been touched by these kind of pandemics before, but now we are. But this has been a topic, in fact, in the external, let's say, white papers or other publications. I can only refer, for example, to the World Economic Forum and their Global Risk Survey, which is a wonderful repository of things to really think about and seriously think about as an organization. So go out there, do research, read, talk with others, and go, try to push yourself outside of the comfort zone. That's really where we need to go to truly be able to consider emerging risks. Thirdly, I would focus on business continuity management as from the angle of decision making. So we think about business continuity and crisis management often as, have you done your fire drill, and has the disaster recovery testing been done, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, this is an incredible exercise in how organizations make decisions in crisis and then really severe crisis scenarios. And to that, how informed are these decisions? How risk sensitive are those decisions? Here, integrated risk management framework comes in very handy, because it connects people, data, and systems, and hopefully those really inform the decisions that we take during crisis. So I would encourage everyone, and this is what we're doing as well, we're really documenting how we make decisions. What are the informations that we use? How quickly, for example, consider how quickly your information is updated, and is that aligned with how quickly your crisis scenario is evolving? Because if those two frequencies are misaligned, then there will be also always a gap in how we make those decisions, what the information we have at hand. And then finally, I would also say that in normal times, then do consider complementing your modeling data, your stress test scenarios, for example, with external information as well. So do reach back out to the external world, to the external data providers. Again, tapping into World Economic Forum or ORIX data sets, or SAS has a data set, and few others as well. So make sure that when you're under normal circumstances and you're thinking about emerging risks, you're thinking about modeling the frequencies and really preparing yourselves more from a quantitative perspective, ensure that some of these emerging risk considerations are also implemented in your modeling data set. Otherwise, it won't really come out in the way that you're hoping it will in your results. So definitely 4 key elements that are very important as we evolve our emerging risk framework going forward.
Well, thank you, Natalia. I agree with you that the recent COVID-19 pandemic is not a black swan event. It definitely caught many people off guard. So, Sophie, I want to direct a question toward you. I mean, given our current status, is there a refocus? Is there a shift in, how we're addressing operational risk?
So I would say, first of all, that COVID-19 has impacted all areas of risk, right? So people have focused on health and safety and continuity of business to start with, and then quickly realized that this was an impact across credit risk, market risk, and critical service providers risk. So it's really touching and impacting organization across their risk register. The second thing I would say is that we even though I think any firms would still be to a certain extent in their crisis management mode, and therefore at this stage I think very few firms would be looking ahead and saying, what other emerging risk have we missed? It's more trying to understand how the world would fundamentally change through this crisis, and trying to adapt to this new world, to this brave new world we're facing. And the third thing I would say um, is that crisis management will have, as Natalia was saying, firms would have had a great opportunity here to understand better what is the importance of having a strong risk radar to identify what are these potentially high impact, low frequency events that are there on the horizon, but also to understand how important it is to spend time planning for them, whether or not this is the hot topic of the regulator at the time. And will have had a great opportunity to practice their crisis management framework in terms of decision making, in terms of communication, in terms of pulling together all these different areas of the business that have to contribute when it's a far and wide ranging crisis like we're facing.
Well, the current situation also raises another set of issues around behavior for firms and their customers. I'm curious, as firms adapt, they also need to revamp these risk management programs that they put in place that have been so impacted by this and caught many off guard. What are the challenges that risk managers face as firms are adapting to these changes? Natalia, do you want to take that?
Sure. Well, certainly, let me start by saying that I fully anticipate that really many companies will take a look at their business models, at themselves, and say, okay, we have survived this crisis. Many of them have, many of them will not, unfortunately. But we have also seen a great cost, a great economic cost. When you look at the larger environment, of course, our unemployment rates are skyrocketing at such a fast pace. Really, the economy grinded to a near halt, not entirely, but it really slowed down, and it does bear a great economic cost, more personally for individuals as well as the companies, the economy as a whole. So companies will take a look at their business models and they say to themselves, this will come again. We will be better prepared, but how do we have to change our business models in order to not have to sacrifice the economy, to not have to put people, individuals into furlough or lay them off, or take additional measures as well that are really different. They're crisis mode measures. To that, certainly risk management and risk management framework will also have to adapt to increasing digitalization, a different mode of working under crisis, and also these new business models as well. I would say that the current frameworks are fairly robust for the most part. They cover with a good, robust approach, risk identification. I think that actually will become even more important, is how do we really utilize the front lines, utilize our current experience, external information to really strengthen the risk identification part of the framework. And then regarding the rest of let's say, ERM, the Enterprise Risk Management or Integrated Risk Management Framework, I think it is quite well suited to continue to manage risks, let's say, for the most part, of course. The challenges are going to be also, let's say, behavioral challenges. It is how do we implement our risk frameworks, our risk processes in a more virtual and a distant manner, for example, as an example. So how do we make sure that these maintain their ethical behavior, or how do we make sure that we stay in touch with them, that the risk awareness continues to be in the same level that it has to be, that we are, let's say, as leaders, as connected to our constituencies as we have been before, the training is still there, and of course that the tools continue to serve our organizations in the way that they have in the past. So I think that there will be a development from the technology side as well in the risk management framework. How do we make information come to us quicker? How do we make, for example, risk reporting even more ubiquitous than it hopefully already is, and how do we more seamlessly incorporate external information into our models, into our risk considerations, into our risk decision making. So I think that the foundations are there. I think we do have to be more agile and faster and more technology driven going forward to make sure that we continue and actually prepare ourselves to better respond to these, let's say, sudden disruptions and challenges, which probably will come to us from yet another angle that we might not be anticipating, just like this pandemic, for example, took place. So I would say that we're on the way. We need to be agile, technology driven, and responsive and creative.
Sophie, do you have any comments on how this is impacting your organization as well?
One thing that struck me throughout the crisis is that how, with other financial firms in the industry, we've quickly realized that not only we had to focus on prioritizing the health and safety of our staff and making sure that we were there for our clients and made sure that there was no interruption for our critical services, but also like our competitors, we grasped that this crisis was maybe an opportunity to restore the reputation, understanding of financial services and banks in particular with the public by showing that we are supportive of the economy and we have to be there to support our clients and the businesses through this crisis. And this has been, I feel, quite well supported by our regulators as well. We have tried to put some forbearance and other measures in place to ensure that firms could have the capital and the means to be supportive to the economy in this difficult space, in these difficult times.
Sophie, I think that segues into a conversation we were having yesterday revolving around AI and predictive analytics. How do you see that impacting your risk organization?
GMB UK, I would say, is still at the early stages of this digital transformation. But what I think I will, and our risk management framework will, and most of my colleagues are still grappling with regards to digitalization, is how this will be impacting our ability to demonstrate that we understand how our models are working, so our model validation processes, and also to continue to maintain the right level of accountability while using effectively machine learning to make this support decision. We still have to make sure that we understand the input and the outputs of this model and this decision, and who remains responsible for it. And one area that I find is very interesting and people should focus on is to make sure that the data that is used for those machine learning programs, so I think it's called training data, is inclusive and removed of biases as much as possible. I very early on, when this debate was starting in industry, heard a very powerful image that came from the security industry, where some people starting to build tools to be able to recognize faces in terms of security monitoring and surveillance. Because the data set they had at their disposal only included the people who were not in the minority in their country, they ended up having tools that only work for certain groups of people, but not others. And it ended up with a group of people being literally faceless, which I thought was quite a striking image that we should all hold on and remember when we are looking at how to use artificial intelligence and machine learning in the future.
Natalia, you mentioned that you can't be predictive with only historical data. How are you taking advantage of these technologies in your organization?
Yeah, so we're also implementing some AI technology in our organization. We are starting sort of step by step, let me say. We're looking at first trying to emulate human decisions that we make based on a fairly set level of parameters. Of course, if we start really thinking about and utilizing AR for predictive modeling of what could happen, so when you're going beyond emulating a very, say, strict and formatted and prescriptive or prescribed, in fact, set of decisions, and you're trying to expand that into, okay, well, now make a decision in a scenario that has not happened yet, and you're using that, for example, you're developing that to predict an impact or consequences of events that have not happened yet. It's really important to incorporate those kinds of events and that kind of thinking into the data set, because if your data set will not model on something that's not in the data set, right? So it's really, really important here again to make sure that we include external thinking, external data, external information into our data sets, especially for stress testing or perhaps scenario analysis and such, to make sure that we are pushing our boundaries in thinking in our approaches of how can we actually anticipate and be sensitive to things that have not yet happened, let's say, to our organizations. I do think that there are sources out there that can be leveraged to this. And I would encourage all organizations to really tap into that. So think beyond the walls of your own data sets, of your own data sources, and complement them with external information as much as possible. That will, of course, never be perfect. There will always be events that we have not thought of, or we might not have considered, but at least we will be pushing ourselves a little bit forward beyond that comfort zone again, to consider new disruptions that might be coming our way.
Well, Natalia, that brings up a good point about the interconnectedness of our supply chains and the ripple effects that has. And certainly we're not going to be able to very easily or quickly unwind that, and may not even want to. But given what we now know and the experiences that we've had, how can we use risk management to improve how we're reacting in the future?
Right. So let me take let's say a supply chain angle of this. Speaking of interconnectedness, I represent a company that is almost at near the ultimate end of supply chain. We're a bank that focuses in the automotive and a leasing industry, and this was an incredible realization through this, for example, through the COVID pandemic, about how interconnected our industry is. And it's not just our industry, of course. So many industries have really, really deep and far-reaching and very complex supply chains, reaching Asia, China, South Korea, of course, where the early pandemic had started early on. So what I will be looking for is actually to see, I'll be definitely on the lookout to see how this evolves. I think we need to be a bit more interconnected and, again, externally focused, to have connections, collaboration, information sharing to the extent that is reasonable and appropriate within the supply chains. And I, for one, definitely be looking out to see how that evolves, how supply chains become partners even more beyond what we see now. I do think that there are a lot of great partnerships within supply chains across many different industries. But I think that will have to be stepped up, especially in a crisis situation, to see how we can anticipate ripple effects throughout supply chains a bit more. And of course, here, vendor risk management, supply chain risk management becomes very, very important. And that's probably a topic all on its own, with various frameworks, assessments, and the way that we manage vendors. But that will definitely, I think, become a more important of a focus than it might have been for some companies in the past.
Well, Sophie, I want to ask you about managing disruptions and operational resilience. I mean, certainly the risk frameworks that we've been working with are going to need to be adjusted. Can you comment on, what you foresee and some of the things that you're working on right now?
Like many of my UK competitors, we have been pushed by our regulators to grasp this concept of operational resilience and go beyond the managing risk to avoid disruption, but assuming that disruption will happen and be able and be prepared to react rapidly to that. So what are the areas of development in that space? Like many others, we have now defined what our critical services here are, and that was a great exercise to really try to see our company outside in through the eyes of our clients and our counterparts, because it's all about making sure that disruptions would not impact our client, but also not impact the market infrastructure, creating ripple effects. And then this also highlighted our dependency, to Natalia's point, to all our outsourced and other service providers. So we are making a great stride in progressing the understanding of the inventory and the level of interdependency with some of these service providers, and putting together the basis for not only a rapid dialogue during crisis, but an ongoing dialogue about their level of resilience and how it impacts ours. And then there will be still a lot of work required to make sure that once we have identified which critical services need to be maintained during all kind of events, what are the steps that we can take if our systems what are the steps we can take to really be able to face all types of disruptions, but certainly those that just a recovery system, a recovery data center, and a recovery location, that won't be enough. We'll have to think about other type of resiliency and redundancy processes to be able to face those challenges.
Natalia, do you want to comment on operational resiliency and some of the things that you're planning for?
Sure. So when we think about a traditional way of what is resilience, we think about how do we bounce back? And with operational resilience, which is now a topic more of a forefront of our thoughts than has ever been before, I think we need to look at it as how do we bounce forward? So we are seeing a really great level of focus and activity around, for example, digitization. So what this crisis has brought to us is about to think and prepare for how do we service our clients in a new digital way? How do we service our products, our clients, our markets, and also our communities as well. So we're seeing a really great change. So we are really harnessing, in a way, we're taking advantage of a situation that has pushed us to the brink. It's on a backdrop that's quite negative, but I think a lot of companies are taking an opportunity here to really evolve themselves, which is a really fantastic opportunity. So what I would say to that is when we are bouncing forward and we're going through this great transformation, we need to bake some of the risk management concepts, frameworks, approaches into this new digital era. And what do I mean by that? For example, let's take enterprise risk management framework. It definitely talks about identification, monitoring, your reporting, your entire control framework. we need to then take the new digital approach to how we service our client and make sure that those elements are almost baked in to the new digital way that we're serving our clients. So what I would say is we need to make sure that we do risk management by design. I've heard many times talk about compliance by design, security by design, and we really also need to focus on risk management by design. So when we are moving our services to the cloud, when we are transforming and digitizing the way the service clients, the way that we operate, do we have the right alerts, monitoring, exception reporting, actually baked in digital control environment that also alerts us if things are going out of bounds beyond our risk tolerances, beyond our capacities. And of course, that lends itself to a variety of dashboarding analytics and such as a topic, but I think we really need to bounce forward with implementing risk management concepts into the new digital era, sort of as a basis for how we are now constructing our new way of working and operating.
Well, Natalia, I love that metaphor of bounce forward. It really kind of changes the mindset and makes you think a little bit more about where we need to be as opposed to where we were. Well, I want to thank you both for taking time to talk with me today. This has been enlightening, and I've enjoyed our conversation. So, Natalia, Sophie, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.